Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're getting ready for the AWS Cloud Practitioner Exam, there is one service you absolutely, positively have to know inside and out, and that's AWS Trusted Advisor. Think of it as your personal expert living inside the cloud, and today we're going to dig into everything you need to know to crush those exam questions. So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about what Trusted Advisor actually is, your automated expert. Then we'll dive deep into the 5 pillars that are its foundation. After that, we'll look at how you unlock its full power, how to actually put its advice into action, and then we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you have to remember for your exam. Sound good? Let's do it. So first things first, why does something like Trusted Advisor even need to exist? Well, it all boils down to a problem that pretty much everyone on AWS runs into sooner or later. Think about it. As you start spinning up more and more stuff, more instances, more databases, more users, your AWS environment gets complicated, and I mean fast. Trying to manually check everything against all the best practices, it's pretty much impossible. How do you keep track of it all without missing a critical security flaw or a huge opportunity to save money? And that is exactly where AWS Trusted Advisor comes into the picture. It's this awesome automated service that is constantly scanning your environment, and it gives you real-time recommendations based on AWS best practices. It's the solution for managing all that chaos. You know, the best way I've heard it described is like this. Think of the diagnostic system in your car. You don't have to be a master mechanic to know your tire pressure is low or the engine needs checking, right? The little light on the dashboard just tells you. Well, Trusted Advisor is exactly like that, but for your AWS account. It scans everything and just points out what needs your attention. Plain and simple. Okay, now for what is maybe the most critical part for your exam. Seriously, pay close attention here. We're talking about the 5 pillars. Trusted Advisor basically sorts all of its checks into these 5 distinct categories, and you absolutely have to know these. So let's kick it off with pillar number 1, and honestly, it's the one everyone gets excited about: cost optimization. You can think of this pillar as your own personal financial auditor, constantly snooping around your AWS account, looking for every single way to trim down your bill. And it's not just giving you general advice, it gets super specific. It'll find that database you spun up for a quick test and then totally forgot about. Or that EC2 instance that's just idling at 5% capacity while you're paying full price for it. It'll even flag things like elastic IP addresses that aren't attached to anything but are still secretly costing you money. And this is a big one. It'll also analyze your usage and recommend things like savings plans or reserved instances, which can literally slash your costs. All right, next up is pillar number 2, performance. Now, this isn't just about saving cash. It's about making sure your applications are running as fast and as smoothly as possible. Because let's be real, a slow app means frustrated users, and that can really hurt a business. So how does it help with performance? Well, it'll warn you if an EC2 instance is constantly maxed out, because that's a classic bottleneck. But it also looks at more subtle things, like if a security group has so many rules that it's actually slowing down network traffic. Or maybe your CloudFront CDN isn't caching content effectively. It finds all that stuff for you. Okay, pillar 3, security. This one is, well, it's a huge deal. It's completely non-negotiable. At AWS, they call security job 0. And these checks are some of the most important ones Trusted Advisor performs to keep your data and your customers' data safe. And whoa, this slide right here is basically an exam study guide. The very first thing Trusted Advisor looks for is multi-factor authentication enabled on your root account. That's the master key to your entire AWS kingdom. It also scans for exposed access keys, which is a major no-no, and warns you about security groups that are just wide open to the whole internet. The point is, these checks help you lock down the basic but critical security settings that are so easy to miss. Next up, we have fault tolerance. Now, this one sounds a bit technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's all about building resilient applications that can survive when things go wrong. Because look, it's not a matter of if a component will fail, it's a matter of when. So, when a server goes down, will your application stay online? This pillar helps make sure the answer to that is yes. To do this, Trusted Advisor looks at some really key things. It'll check if your RDS databases are set up with multi-AZ, which means you have a live standby ready to take over in a completely different data center. It makes sure you haven't put all your EC2 instances in a single availability zone, which would be a huge single point of failure. And it also checks for simple but life-saving things like enabling versioning on your S3 buckets to protect you from accidentally deleting something important, and of course, verifying that you have recent backups. And that brings us to our 5th and final pillar, service limits.
I want you to think of this one as your early warning system. It's designed to stop your operations from suddenly grinding to a halt because you've hit an invisible ceiling you didn't even know was there.
See, AWS sets these default limits, or quotas, on how many of a certain resource you can create. Trusted Advisor monitors these for you. When you start getting close, specifically when you hit 80% of a limit for, say, the number of VPCs you can have, it gives you a heads up. This is awesome because it allows you to request a limit increase before you hit the wall and your team suddenly can't launch anything new. All right, so now that we know the 5 pillars, there's a really crucial detail you have to understand for the exam. Not all of these Trusted Advisor checks are available to everybody. So right out of the box, every single AWS account gets access to 56 foundational checks. These are totally free, and they primarily cover those core security items, like the MFA on the root account check, and all of the service limit checks. But to unlock the full power of Trusted Advisor, we're talking about a whopping 482 checks. This is where you get all the really detailed cost optimization and performance recommendations we just talked about. So how do you get them? It all comes down to your AWS support plan. This is a very common exam question, so listen up. If you're on the basic or developer plans, you get those 56 core checks. To get the full suite of 482 checks, you have to be on a business, enterprise on-ramp, or enterprise support plan. Just remember this, business is the minimum tier you need for full access. Now, Trusted Advisor is really cool, but it's even cooler when you realize it's not just a static dashboard you have to remember to check. You can actually integrate it with other AWS services to make it an active, automated part of your daily operations. So check this out. Here's how it works. Step 1. Trusted Advisor finds an issue, like a security group that's too open. Step 2. That finding can automatically trigger an Amazon CloudWatch event. Step 3. That event can then publish a message to an Amazon SNS topic. And step 4, your operations team, who is subscribed to that topic, gets an email or a text message the moment the issue is detected. This turns a simple recommendation into an immediate, actionable alert. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, so let's boil it all down to the absolute must-know facts for your Cloud Practitioner exam. Think of this as your final study guide. All right, here are the crucial points. 1. What is Trusted Advisor? It's your automated expert for AWS best practices. Simple. 2. The 5 pillars, you have to know them by heart. Let's say them one more time. Cost optimization, performance, security, fault tolerance, and service limits. 3. Full access requires a business support plan or higher. And 4. It's not just a report, it's an actionable tool that you can automate with CloudWatch. And that's your deep dive into AWS Trusted Advisor. You now have the core knowledge you need to confidently answer those questions on the exam. The service is there, working for you 24/7. The only question left is, where will you start? Good luck with your studies.